1,800 cities, over 60 countries, all 50 states. The main reason is because my friend that I'm joined with, who's here with me all the time, he is the best sports gambler in the world. He is the Philly Godfather, Mr. Steve Maltepes. And we are joined also with a special Dr. Chow. He is Pro Football Doc, is how you can find him on Twitter. He was a graduate of Harvard, was a physician, main physician at the San Diego Chargers for 17 years. And also in WWE when I was there as well. Those old guys, good friends of mine, a lot of good friends of his, from Larry Heck to Dr. Amon. Doc, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Doc, get into some injury reports because you can see I'm wearing a Houston Oilers jersey, as we talked about before you came on the show. I'm a huge Texas fan of all kinds, and unfortunately, my season just ended with Dak Prescott going down. So, what other major – first, let's ask you about Dak Prescott. What is going to happen with Dak Prescott? How long is he out, and do you recover from that? He's a mobile quarterback. Does he recover that mobility?
I believe he does recover the vast majority, if not all, of his mobility. Let me ask you this question, since you're such a big football guy, right? Who's more mobile as a player, Dak Prescott or Darren Sproles?
Well, I think Darren Sproles, yes.
Right. Well, Darren Sproles had a very similar ankle fracture dislocation in his second year in San Diego that I fixed, and he went on to a 14-year career. And I can say that because Darren has allowed me to, so it's not a HIPAA violation of any sort. But so that's where I'm optimistic. The Dak season is done, no question about it. But this is not an Alex Smith injury, and he will be fine for Week 1 next season. And for those that are worried about his financial state, I'd still love to be his agent and get that 3% because he's still going to get a big fat deal come March, whether it's a re-franchise tagged or whatever. He won't necessarily be 100% healthy in March, but he'll be trending well enough at that point in time that he should be able to be fine doing it and not have any issues.
Yeah, Doc, I became a big fan reading your articles in the San Diego. I think it was the San Diego Tribune. And then I started following you on Twitter, and we've talked in the past. Now, for the guys, I know you got 160,000 followers, and you've become this big social media guy lately, and I love it because your information is priceless to anyone playing fantasy football or betting on sports. But tell the guys that don't really know you exactly what you do. I know your information is basically insider knowledge. It's not inside information, but it's the best out there. If you want to explain exactly what you do to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, you're exactly right. I'm a former NFL team physician of 17 years, and I would put it to you this way. If you're getting audited by the IRS, and the NFL often is somewhat secretive about injuries, if you're getting audited by the IRS, you want a good accountant helping you out, or you want a good accountant who used to be an IRS agent. I'm the former IRS agent, so that's where I talk about insider knowledge as opposed to insider information, right? Insider information, I could call the doctors around the league and athletic trainers, I still know almost all of them, and get information, but they wouldn't really tell me or want to tell me, and if they did tell me, I'd be sworn to secrecy, right, because of HIPAA. And there are times that you've seen there where on Twitter and otherwise, I'll say, look, I got to stay away from that one. And that's because I do have some inside information. And in the stock market, insider information will land you in jail, but insider knowledge will make you a lot of money. And I would argue the same thing here from injuries. And what I do that's different than everybody else is I don't go by the injury reports. I don't care if a team says they're fine and full or the team says they're questionable. I go by my eyes and my brain in terms of what I see in assessing video. So for 17 years, I saw guys on the field, on the sideline, in the locker room, and the next day after an MRI. Then I would actually go upstairs and look at film because I had about 45 minutes before meeting with the GM and would see what the actual video of the injury was and then piece it back together. So now I'm able to reverse engineer it. And that's why in-game, as in-game becomes more popular, I've got a lot of in-game insights that may change what your thinking might be on lines, but also leading up to games, what does questionable really mean? Is this guy just a decoy today or is it meaningful? And, hopefully you've enjoyed the ProFootballDoc.com, the injury index and field view, where I think we've been pretty right on in giving some insights where there are some line inequities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year, one of my biggest wagers, I think it was last year, was when the Jets were playing the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys were missing two of their starting offensive linemen. And I remember, watching your tweets and reading your tweets and some of the other stuff, and they were basically saying these offensive linemen had no chance of playing. And that was one of my biggest wagers last year. And if you guys remember, the Jets went in there as 7-point underdogs and won the game outright. So this injury information, I mean, it's gold. Any information that's not factored into the line, any information, any insider knowledge that you have, it's pure gold. And I tell people all the time, they got to follow you on Twitter, read all your articles, and go to your website.
Yeah, the website right now, we're in a fortunate position that we got some seed round funding sewed up. So for the rest of this year, we're able to offer it for free and, to really build up the following. And thanks to everyone out there who's followed at ProFootballDoc.com. Last week they crashed the website when Dak Prescott went down. So
that was me.
We're beefing it up some more now.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a brilliant idea because people called Bill Gates crazy when he gave out Windows for free, and it was such a great product. And you're doing the same exact thing. It's a brilliant plan. I mean, next year you guys might have a couple million people on there.
Yeah, well, and where it's ultimately going to head, if this is recreational, yeah, you want it. You probably don't ever want to pay for it. But if this is where you're making money, you want it first. And so obviously there's ways to get the information out there where it's advantageous.
Doc, I'm a big admirer of people who find a void and fill that void, and that's exactly what you've done. As Steve has talked about with sports betting and people, sports fans in general, that want to know about injuries, want to know about games coming up. People, the more they know, the more they're investing in games, and the more they want to watch games. I want to ask you some about injuries coming up, what teams are having some problems this week, but I also want to ask you first, please, about COVID. Falcons, I saw some of your tweets this morning about the Falcons. How bad is the COVID situation right now? And in your opinion, does the NFL have it under control?
Well, I mean, does society have it under control, right? So,
right.
And NFL's obviously part of the broader society. Yeah, that's a big deal right now. Back in March, and everyone thought when the pandemic was going off pretty hard, everyone thought I was crazy when I said I felt like the NFL would start on time, but the question is what would happen after that, and that indeed has been the case. And right now, I think the NFL started off doing an unbelievable job. Right, they were basically pitching a no-hitter, and that became a shutout, and not so much anymore. Right, I mean, where there's some of it, and look, I think they're going to get a handle on it. I think a week 18 and a little bit of pushback is inevitable because in the game of Jenga with their schedules, I don't think there are too many pieces they can pull out anymore without crashing the tower, right? So, but they'll get it done. And the reason why I have faith in it is that this is a sport where players and owners are absolutely financially aligned. Since there are no guaranteed contracts, and everything is based off of the salary cap. And the salary cap is a percentage of revenue. If revenue falls, the salary cap falls. And there's long-term problems down the road. Think of it this way. There's a reason why Russell Wilson is paid $35 million and Big Ben is paid $34 million. And the star quarterbacks are at that level. And Dak, your guy, has wanted 40. But wanting 40 or more is based on the salary cap going up because GMs will tell you 17% of the cap is what you can afford to spend on a franchise quarterback. That's a common model. So with the salary cap at $200 million, you get Russell Wilson at 35, Big Ben at 34. If for some reason they didn't finish this season, the revenue will get cut in half or more, and next year's salary cap, even if they tried to spread the peanut butter, would be over years, would be severely impacted to the point where maybe Russell Wilson survives, but Big Ben becomes a salary cap casualty, right? And free agents don't get their money. So that's why I believe that this will work out as is, but it's going to take a lot of cooperation on everyone's behalf.
Doc, what is the main position that you talk about when you have injuries that will move a line? We saw what happened with Nick Saban, and we see how much a great coach is worth. About 2.5 points is what the line moves. So we know what Nick Saban is worth right now in this rivalry with number 2 versus number 3. What's the main positions that move betting lines that you've seen in your 17-year career with San Diego and what you've done since?
Well, I mean, the main position that moves lines obviously is quarterbacks, right? and so my information given early, I remember, was it 2 Thanksgivings ago? I remember when Mitch Trubisky, was it 2 or 1? I forget. But Mitch Trubisky with his throwing shoulder injury, I remember he finished the game against the Vikings, and it was a Thursday Thanksgiving Day game. And on Monday, Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter both reported throwing shoulder injury, but he'll be fine. And that was unusual to hear that so definitively. And that night, I heard the press conference with Matt Nagy, who said, yeah, he finished the game. He's fine. It was the Harrison Smith hit. He played the final, few minutes. He's fine. He's going to be fine for Thursday. So I went to Game Pass to look at it, and I had seen it in real time. And I went, holy smokes, he subluxed his shoulder. He's not playing this Thursday. And so I wrote a San Diego Union Tribune article, and I still remember I got it edited up Tuesday morning. I pushed send at 1 p.m. Pacific time on a Tuesday, and the line was Bears -4, -3.5. And by the time I checked again an hour and a half later, it was Bears -2.5. It went across the magic 3 on a Tuesday with no news. So the line definitely can move, and of course quarterbacks. But that's like getting the information early. But the other way is, as Philly Godfather was saying, it's the hidden injuries that aren't in the lines that are the biggest things. I mean, who's the most important? Depends on the team, right? I mean, for the Cowboys for years, remember historically, and this is what Philly Godfather was saying, saying Tyron Smith isn't going to play. Well, his replacement gives up 3 sacks. 3 sacks is like 2 turnovers, right? I mean, 2 turnovers and you don't win the game.
It's worth 6 points. Each turnover is worth about 3 points. So, yeah, it's a lot of points.
Right. So look, as Philly Godfather knows, it's about getting on the right side of the line. It's not being absolute. The ball's not round. There's always funny bounces. But if you're most of the time on the right side of the line, it's going to work out in the long run. In the short run, of course, there's always funny bounces. So you look at key players, going back to my San Diego Chargers days, and I'm not insulting anybody. We played with some great players. But let's go through who I would have said is the most important player on our team. It wasn't Phillip Rivers, my good friend. He's a super good quarterback, but Billy Volek is very capable. It wasn't LaDainian Tomlinson. Michael Turner is very capable. You could argue Gates, but we had other pass catchers and tight ends as well. You could argue Lights, Sean Merriman, but we had Sean Phillips too. So there's a lot of arguments. But to me, the one indispensable guy for us was Jamal Williams, because we ran a 3-4. We didn't have a true nose tackle behind him. We had some good players, but not a true nose tackle. And as everyone knows, the 3-4 is based on the nose tackle occupying 2 blocks to let the linebackers run free. And the 3-4 is what freed up SP, Sean Phillips, and Lights to get the quarterback. And so to me, on those mid-2000 Charger teams, it was Jamal Williams. And that's where the line movement should be. And that's where sharp guys like Philly Godfather can see it. And so it's not always the same. Look, if you have a 1A, 1B quarterback, does it really matter? Obviously if you have, and for Dak, I think Andy Dalton's capable. So there might not be as much of a dip in terms of what happens.
Yeah, and pass pressure doesn't just affect the side, it also affects the total. I remember one year Joey Bosa wasn't playing, and he was right around 17% of the production numbers for that Chargers defensive line. And we buried the over because we knew the quarterback would have more time to throw the ball. And the game, I think it moved about 3 points, and the game went over, 14 points over the closing Vegas number. So it works both ways. It works on the side and on the total when you're looking to bet these games with that type of information.
Yeah. And so encourage all your listeners, go to profootballdoc.com. It's free. And early week, you can get an idea of what the team's going to look like, so you can get in early on lines, but also the hidden line advantages. But you're absolutely correct. I am not a tout I'm not out here saying pick this, pick this, pick this. Yes, for the articles at Outkick, they're having me pick some games, and boy, I don't know if I can make this continue. But the Sunday morning picks that I put out have been 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, 3-1-1, and 4-1. I'm saying that now because I got to take a picture of that scoreboard, because how does that last, right? I mean, come on. I mean, but I'm telling you this, I am not a tout. What I do is give you the information so you, Philly Godfather, can say, yes, because of XYZ reason, when I factor in this injury or field view, that's the over, or I factor this in, that's the side, or when I factor this in, it's the money line, or when I factor this in, this is a huge DFS bargain at running back based on their run defense, or, in fantasy, I've got two different wide receivers whose corners are all injured. It's a tool. And, look, in the CBD gold rush that's out there nowadays, right, and as many states make marijuana CBD legal, I'm not growing hemp. I'm not distributing hemp. I'm not selling CBD oils or edibles or thing. I'm selling or providing hemp fertilizer for you to make the best decisions and have the best product on your own. How you use that fertilizer is up to you. And that's where a smart mind like yours, like you guys, can interpret it and come up with the things. I'm not trying to be a tout. That's not my world. I'm an injury expert. I'm not a fantasy or DFS or gambling expert. Injury expert only.
It's ProFootballDoc.com, and ProFootballDoc is how you have the Twitter handle for Dr. Chow. Dr. Chow, this week in the NFL, what do you have? What are the most banged-up teams where you see injuries potentially affecting games?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the offensive lines are really beaten up around the league, and there are several of them. Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, okay, going left to right. Andre Dillard is out for the season, and Jason Peters, who's filling in for Brandon Brooks at right guard, flipped back over, and Jason Peters is out. Samolu, the left guard, is out. Jason Kelsey has a hip issue, but playing and practicing. Right guard Brandon Brooks' Achilles is out, and now Lane Johnson has been in and out of games with that with that ankle issue that had preseason surgery that the head coach says he's day to day. He's been 2 months. He's month to month, and the second opinion. So he's in and out of games. So that is a very beat up offensive line. But here's where you have to be careful. This is where you have to be smart. The average guy probably knows that already. We've been talking about the beat up Eagles line since week 1. But you know what? By week 3 and 4, I remember when they played the 49ers and they were getting 7, one of my picks at Outkick was take the Eagles, because +7 is a lot. And because Jason Peters went out that week, the line went from 3 to 7. And I said, that's too much. Now, I didn't say money line, but the Eagles won outright because I also knew the 49ers are banged up. So sometimes it's the new injuries that have more effect, because if it's been seen and out there for a while, like Dallas Cowboys offensive line has issues, but that's out there. So that starts to get factored into the line. Whereas the new ones, and so what's the new one to watch? The Steelers. Why? Right tackle, Zach Banner's out with ACL from week 1. David DeCastro didn't finish the game with an abdominal injury, does not project to play. His backup was Wisniewski at right guard, is still out. And now Mike Pouncey didn't finish the game with a foot, and we're not so sure what his status is. So that is something to watch. And the new Deltas are the ones that probably are really not incorporated into the lines.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the Pittsburgh game, because that's the game I was going to ask you about. On our podcast yesterday, I mentioned the fact that anytime you go up against a good defensive line the following week, your offensive line won't play at an optimum performance, especially when you're playing the top tier teams like the Steelers, the Rams, and the Eagles, who have a great defensive line. And I actually took the Browns yesterday +3.5. The game has moved down to 3 even money. And one of the contributing factors of me placing that wager was because I read your report about the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, and the other thing was that Pittsburgh's opposing opponents on the year really haven't been that great. So you helped me place that wager, Doc.
Well, I appreciate that, and here's the thing: I'm not with the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line information. I'm not telling you or the world to take the Browns. what I'm telling you is factor that into your decisions. So you like the Browns, so go ahead and take them early and get the better line. Now, if you really like the Steelers, okay, wait and then take the Steelers later, right? I'm not trying to pick the game for you. I'm just giving you the injury analysis and the difference between what I do. And look, there's no one more thorough than some of the sites out there, Roto World, but they're repeaters. The coach and the team says questionable, and they put out questionable. Look, you're in Philadelphia. Week 1, if you go back and you can look at it, I had Miles Sanders as dubious to play, and nobody was worried about Miles Sanders week 1. Week 1, I had the Eagles as their offensive line having major issues, and they gave up 8 sacks in a Washington football team upset. And Miles Sanders didn't even travel to the game. Yep. So that's the line inequities that we talk about. And it's not every game, every while. You got to do your homework. But that's why the website, I think, is valuable. It kind of sifts through a lot of the stuff for you with the grades and what have you. Obviously, you're successful because you do a lot of homework, right? This isn't random based on gut feeling.
This is all research. And that's why I tell everyone, your website is priceless if you're looking to make money in the market, if you're looking to get ahead of the market, because once that information is out there, it's public information. The odds makers have the same exact information, so that line will be adjusted either way. But your website gives you a little bit of an insight, gives you a little bit of a head start on, what some people will find out later in the week, so you can get the best of the number. So you can take the 3.5 and get the best of that number, off that key number of 3. And we all know how important that key number is. So that's why I tell everyone to go to Pro Football Doc, go to your website. It's priceless. Now, it's priceless if you're looking to make money in the sports betting market.
Well, thank you. And your check's in the mail.
Hey, one thing.
Speaking of which, where's my check for that Jets money line win from a year or two ago? Where's my check?
I was on the Eagles money line against the 49ers. I might be the only guy who bet it and actually gave it out, had the balls to give it out on Twitter and on my website. And that game actually closed 9.5, so it didn't even close 7. And I was also on the Redskins first game of the year money line and the points. And a lot of that is attributed to you. Your information helps me check off another box on my handicap.
One thing I'm always asked about when people talk to me, because Philly Godfather had 64.8% success last year in the NFL, which is just almost unheard of, is because I worked on Wall Street and I've done a lot with stocks and equities. They said, what's the difference between Wall Street guys and sports betting guys? And I said, almost nothing, except the sports betting guys do more research. It's all data. It's not the old guys with stogies and, have a hunch and I think my team's going to win. It's all about data. That's why ProFootballDoc.com and Pro Football Doc, how to find you on Twitter, is so important because it's such an important part of that research. Doc, I don't want to keep you too long. I thank you for coming on, but I do want to ask you, is there anything else in the NFL this week besides the 2 teams, the Steelers, the Eagles, that have some injury troubles that we should look out for?
Well, there's a lot of injury troubles out there, and there's a lot of teams with some secondary issues. And go to ProFootballDoc.com to see them and hopefully the field view. And I'd love if you want to text or send me a message on Twitter on what you guys like, or even your listeners out there what you like and don't like about the site, or email support@profootballdoc.com and let us know. But the other thing that I would put out there is, since you talk about COVID and such a thing, and there's a lot of people who pay attention to injury reports, don't fall. I'll give you a tip here. There's a lot of people that I see that see a guy did not practice due to illness, and we'll see that today on Thursday as well, right? And people will start to freak out. This guy's not going to play. Don't worry about those guys as much as you think. Here's why. In years past, when you saw a guy sent home for illness, that potentially could have a bigger impact, especially it was Friday on his health on Sunday. In the COVID year, you look at the percentages, there's a lot more people that do not practice due to illness, and here's why. With the pandemic protocols, if you have a fever, if you have a cough, if you have a stomach ache, if you have anything, a runny nose, you're sent home, period, end of discussion, which then makes it a DNP, and then they put in illness. In years past, if you had the sniffles, you still practiced, maybe full, and we never heard about it. So I'm not saying discount when you see illness, but those illnesses that are on there are not COVID illnesses. And you're going to see a lot more of them this year, and you already have, and they're not always meaningful because it's just part of the protocol to send people home. So don't freak out about it. If your fantasy guy got sent home with an illness today or tomorrow and did not practice, that does not mean it's severe. As I talked about this offseason when The Last Dance aired, there's going to be no more Michael Jordan flu games. I mean, if you have a temperature, you're going home, even if your COVID test is negative in the morning of the game. So that's just the new way of the world in 2020.
Well, Dr. Chow, thank you very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. We tell to all of our followers, the main thing is research. You're betting real money here. You're betting money that you want to increase it. You certainly don't want to lose it. And ProFootballDoc.com is the way to one of those biggest research tools that you have. ProFootballDoc is how you follow you on Twitter. Follow the action. And my friend, the Philly Godfather, we thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Chow, thank you very much for joining us. See you soon.
Thank you, guys.